I've seen a bunch of videos online of you talking about space, and your dream of being an astronaut as a young man, and what is it like just to see the Earth from above? And to be lived up there for like, 95 days, which actually is kind of a bummer, to be honest with you. Because, you know this if you saw that video, maybe the other thing is if you stay for 100 days, they give you a patch. Right, I'm a day 95. And the space shuttle Discovery shows up to bring me home. And Mark Kelly was a commander. He goes, Garrett, it's time to hop in and come home. And I'm like, man, I just need 5 for take to get that badge. Can we just go around a few more times or something? And yeah, it seems like 95 days should be enough, man. Give the man a patch, right? You know, how much does a patch cost? How much does a patch cost the longest anybody stayed up there the longest? For an American, with Scott Kelly's nearly a year in spaces. Longest in a row, basically, but it is a Russian that stayed up there for longer than a year. And he has the all-time record how when they come back, what is 90 days like coming back? Because I've talked to people who've gone there, when they come back, their balance is all off the equilibriums. Oh yeah, you kind of messed up, and in your vestibular system is what's affected the most, at least. That's what's most noticeable. When you first get back, actually the first thing I noticed. Let me back up, is how heavy things were again, so I took off my helmet and I was holding it in my hand, and it felt like I was holding the anchor to the USS Nimitz. That's I can't, am I ever going to brush my teeth? It'd be too arduous. This is your body bone loss severely weakened in 95 days, well, back in the day back when I was going there. So that mission, my long-term mission, was back in 2008, and back then we were still losing bone density and muscle mass as we're going up dead along. He lost about 1% of bone every month. So I was about 3% low. They don't anymore. Because as we found out, we came up with better countermeasures to prevent that. What are the countermeasures? It's basically working out. And it's resistive exercise that does it for you, which we knew back when I was going. But the problem was we had this machine that was kind of a first generation of the workout machine. And it could do large reps, but low load. So you're doing a lot of reps at low weight. And then that helped. But what helps, it turns out we found this out kind of by happenstance. But it turns out that high load, low reps works much better. So we got this new machine that you could really crank it up to 11. And the guys now that are working out on that thing are coming home with no muscle or bone loss at all. Wow. That's right, Kuzu. What's the Chris Hadfield, Canadian gentleman that we had on? Yes, Chris Hadfield. When the Commander Hadfield came back, he said it took him a whole year to recover. Yeah. I mean, that was still is still kind of in the early days. So I don't know which machine he used. He probably did use a new one. But overall, it does take to get everything back, to get your full vestibular system back, your sense of balance, to get all your bone, all your muscle back to baseline. It took me a year to get all that back. Wow, it's kind of like rehabbing from a major sports injury. That's got to be so strange. Your body just wants to shrivel up when you're up there because there's no gravity. Yeah, it's really interesting because it's an adaptation. And then the body's is incredible. So what it's doing is it's realizing, hey, I don't have to carry my own weight anymore. So why do I need this big, bulky skeleton? Wow, it's like you're becoming kind of like a fish where you're shedding all the bone density. Because you don't have to, your body realizes, I don't need it. It's like a fish in water. The hell fish have very slender bones. That's an interesting way to look at it, like a fish. Yeah, wow. And we fight it by working out. And how often you have to workouts every day. How often, look how much time these do schedule, 2 hours. Now you're not on the machine for 2 hours. It's also prepping, nearly getting changed. And cleaning up afterwards, but so you're working a good hour every day. Was it like a sweat in space? It's weird because what happens is, if you don't notice, if you in the beginning, you don't even realize it, but it's all building up. And even without if you have no hair to soak it up, it just builds up like this thin film of water on your head, like a coating of water. Haha. And you don't even notice it because it doesn't run down. And then somebody calls your name. You're like, yeah. And then, oh, that's crazy. I never even thought of that. So it just kind of floats off your body. Yeah. It's like a dog shaking itself, and it just goes everywhere. So if you have it on your arm, you can kind of just go, and the sweat will go flying. Your crewmates won't be too happy with you. You do this a lot. But yeah, wow. Oh, that's their video of people doing that in space. There's got to be, should we share so much video? Somebody's gonna have done that. But so are you, basically doing compound movements like deadlifts and squats and things along those lines. Yeah, functional fitness kind of stuff and you're focusing on certain areas. So the bone loss comes mostly from your legs because you're not loading. So basically our bones need a stimulus to regenerate, and it happens to us every day. So as you walk, as you go upstairs, that load that the bones feel, the compressive load, is telling the bone, hey, make some more. Now you take that away, and the bone stops making more, and that's the problem. People say, like, can't you just like calcium pills? But it's not a mineral deficiency, it's just there's no load that's interesting that the body adapts so quickly, the 90 days, as such. And if you adaptations didn't do anything for 90 days at all, you'd be in real trouble, right? That's what's really kind of freaky is thinking about, like, well, what if we don't fight this? Because all these adaptations you go through are not a problem when you're in space. It's only a problem if you want to come home right losing that bone, even like not using your vestibular organs anymore, your semicircular canals, your otolith organs, you're not making use of those for your balance, you're just going purely on the visual. But that doesn't even make you kind of sick. You get kind of, it's like being air sick or seasick, but once your body adapts, you're fine. So the question is, like, what would we become if we didn't fight it? What if we just went with it and stayed up there doing a water balloon? What would you become? Right, you become actually that the place I think in science fiction that gets it the most correct is if you watched The Expanse. You ever watched that show? No, I heard it's Gravity, a really good show. I'd never got into it though, it's good. And they get it right because they show people like these belters that live in partial gravity like their whole lives, and they have much more slender bones, and like they catch this like terrorist guy, and they want to torture him, and all they do is I make him stand up in gravity and on Earth, and it's incredibly painful for him, and that would probably be what would happen, and it must take a long-ass time to get returning to Earth everything back if you went from Earth gravity to the space station, and you lived up there for a year and didn't do anything about it, and then came back to Earth. I mean, you'd basically be like, it would be hard to crawl, right? You would get you all year. If you don't try to fight it, the vestibular stuff would come back probably about the same rate. But we would be really hurting with your muscle atrophy and your bone. So you would lose a lot of your skeleton if you're up there for a year and did nothing. And you would also all your muscles that you don't use, like in your legs and your postural muscles. So, we're back, you're not using those anymore. So they were just like waste away to nothing. You'd be okay in your arms because you're doing everything you do is with your arms. That's how you move. That's how you get around, is by pulling and pushing. But there's no walking, there's no stairs, there's nothing. Does it affect the way space brain you think at all? Some people describe a kind of an issue with short-term memory. They call it like space brain, a small group of people that would understand what you're talking about there. I got spray bro. I got that too, yeah. So is it something that I never really noticed it? But I don't know how much of that is real and how much that's like you're freaking out because you're in space, right? So it's distracting and maybe you forget like what that number was supposed to remember. But like if you're really in the middle of something and you're all excited and you kind of can't remember somebody's phone number. It's kind of like that. Oh, okay, so it's just, I would imagine that just fluid shift being up there breathing, that recirculated air, it's got to be odd, right? Yeah. And it might stink, but I don't know, because the other thing that happens is you have this big fluid shift. So right now we have a lot of blood pulling up in our legs. And our heart, its most important job, of course, is to feed the bringing oxygenated blood. And then when you take the gravity vector out of the picture, the heart sends too much up to the brain, and the stuff doesn't collect in our legs anymore, and it all shoots up here, and you get to shift of all that blood volume to your upper body, and your head gets all puffed up. Whoa. Yeah, like my first night in space, I went to sleep, which is kind of hard to do because you're in space. You don't want to go to sleep, right? Yeah. And on that first night, I woke up in the middle of night. I could have sworn I was standing on my head doing a headstand or a handstand. I'm like, why am I standing on my head in my sleep? This is strange, right? And then I looked at the window, I saw the Earth. I'm like, oh, that's right, I'm in space, yeah. So all the blood was just kind of pooling in your head, yeah. Is if you like hanging by gravity boots or something, if it feels exactly like that, wow. And then, after a day, you get used to it and it doesn't bother you anymore. But you feel congested because you still have all this volume up here, so your sense of smell and your sense of taste are all dead, and wow, it's kind of like, so it's kind of like when you have a cold, and in your sense of smell and your sense of taste are not as strong, so it's like that all the time. That's why we cover, we have every hot sauce known to humankind upon the space station. We like sriracha, we got, Louisiana Cajun fire sauce, and whatever we got, like a whole stockpile of it, because you pour that on everything. So you can get some taste because otherwise everything tastes really bland. Oh wow, food now, what are you eating up there, austere? Is it freeze-dried foods? Mostly, yeah. You don't go for the food, all right, this is not like a foodie holiday. So you get basically two choices. You have the American food, which is essentially MREs, like military freeze-dried, irradiated, infinite shelf life kind of stuff. And then the Russian food is also based on their military rations, but from submarines, and they Russian food actually tastes better. But the problem is when a presentation, because it comes in cans, so you get these cans, and even though it tastes good, you open that can up and you look at it. It's like God looks like dog food. There's like congealed and yeah, but it tastes better, it tastes better. But it's just like so unappetizing when you open that can up. And, it's just not as what would happen if you brought fresh things up there would they would. They rot at the same rate that they would rot in America. Yeah, the thing is we have no refrigeration. Oh, we didn't when I was there. They actually have a small refrigerator now, so you can't have anything that needs to be refrigerated. But you would usually like for the first couple days, we take a bag of fresh food, and we took like sandwiches and fruits and vegetables and stuff. And then